Hello, Richard here from Eagle 6 Airsoft. We have the new Evolt from Marui here to give us some testing, and yeah, I just thought I'd give you some just sort of initial thoughts, you know, on obviously having just you know, shot it and got it out of the box and stuff. You know, obviously the biggest highlight in my opinion is obviously the overall gun's aesthetic and feel. You know, it feels like an MWS, you know, so and that's obviously a compliment in that the MWS has real steel sizing. So it's obviously, you know, here is thin, you know, so obviously, you know, the actual, you know, grip is thinner, you know, everything is just real steel sizing. So it's obviously for people looking for obviously the most authentic sizing of an airsoft gun, obviously this is it. It's got the interchangeable barrel, so it's a nice touch in that obviously if you don't want it to be, you know, you want it to be CQBR length, you just unscrew this and put the flash hider there. If you want to extend it, you've got there. Yeah, we've got the, there's no trademarks on there, which obviously makes, you know, the gun a little bit easier with regards to obviously trademarking issues and stuff. However, there's a lot of people obviously expressed that that's a great thing, you know, in that they can now put their custom trademarks on there. But yeah, there was obviously a lot of people that were just happy with the cult markings, you know, so and they've gone now. So it's a positive and a negative. So in that, you know, obviously if you were to buy this sort of same version of NGRS, you would obviously get the cult trades on there. So now you're going to have to get these laser etched on there, which is not a problem. There's companies like obviously West Laser, which will, you know, happily put obviously the you know the laser trades on there for you for whatever one you want. So the gun itself won't actually operate unless you have a there you go, so it just goes empty, and it, you know, you put the battery in now, pull the trigger, nothing actually happens. So we can put a magazine in and pull the trigger and nothing happens. The only time it will actually fire, like I say, is obviously when the battery's connected, obviously, and when you do that. So now it will then activate it, and you can actually fire, and then you can empty the magazine. And then obviously once it reaches empty, you know, it's mag detection, then you can obviously load it up again. There are 81 rounds in the magazine. So obviously it's devoid of any of the you know, potential lockup issues that you would get with obviously, you know, normal AEGs or NGRS. You can spam that all day long because it's obviously got a computerized system in there, so it's a digital trigger. So yeah, it's obviously super quick trigger response. So one issue, which is negative at the moment, so bearing in mind obviously this is fairly early days in obviously testing and, you know, using this and its lifespan. It will not use normal batteries. So I've tested an MP5 NGRS, which obviously has another TM MOSFET system in it, and on a battery with an MR30 connector, and it was working absolutely fine. Transferred that same battery into the stock tube here to operate it, put the magazine in, and it did not work. That was a 1300 7.4 LiPo. So that's, you know, that's extra cost there. There's absolutely no doubt. Now don't get me wrong, obviously the Marui charger has been effortless to use. The battery that it has, which I can show you, it's so you pop the pin out, flip up the top, and then just the battery is tucked in here. This is the non-recoil model. The recoil model should be coming out at a later date. And then you have a hard shelled, it's like a plastic bodied LiPo in there, so which has got the inbuilt balancing wires through here, so it doesn't actually have a separate balance tab. So yeah, it's a great product, but and like I say, it's only 800 milliamp hour. Obviously, at some point that's going to drain, but it's obviously going to be very efficient because it's you know, MOSFET controlled. These are £60. The battery charger is 120, including a battery. So yeah, there's just factor in the fact that the gun's 750, so plus, you know, an extra 200, you know, for your batteries. That's assuming they're in stock, and then there's obviously the delivery issues of batteries. You know, so yeah, it's a downside to it. This is obviously the. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call this quick change. I haven't really had a play about with it yet. There's no, like, you know, magic little switch or something to get into there, but it looks like it's going to be a couple of screws and then just sliding that assembly out, and then obviously just, you know, changing the spring. We have not yet done that, so I'm not going to really comment further on that until we get a bit more information on it. So yeah, and we pop the top down here. Just be careful with obviously the wiring. You do get like a little bit of a leeway there, but you want to make sure the wiring's tucked neatly up. And then we can just pop the top down, put the pin back in, and again it's treating it like an MWS. Externally, it's got the ambi fire selector on there. I'm not sure how I feel about that from an old school perspective, although, like I say, we're talking old school perspective, and we've got an M4 SOCOM without a carry handle, so it's a bit of an odd configuration. But and I will admit that also I'm not fully up on the current you know, latest iteration of whatever M4 is at. It may well genuinely have ambidextrous fire selector on the latest iteration of M4, you know, SOCOM model. You know, it's yeah, it could well do. Obviously, the main benefit of the ambi is that you now have the ability to obviously push that all the way through and replace with obviously aftermarket ones. And you can now officially do, you know, like I say, ambidextrous for something like a KS1 or KS3 imitation build, you know, which just was incredibly difficult on the NGRS platform. Not impossible, but incredibly difficult. So now obviously it's going to be so much easier to do something like a KS1 replica with obviously just simply removing this, putting a new aftermarket barrel on there, getting it sprayed. You've already got your ambidextrous fire selector, Magpul stock on the back here, and yeah, it's getting real close real quick, so which is nice to see. So yeah, you've got a lot more external options. This is obviously closer. I mean, the best way to describe this is and it's a compliment, you know, a PTW. This is what this is. It's PTW for 750 quid. You know, with all due respect to PTW, because it's obviously a fantastic system, and it's been around for 25 years. So it was leading the way for a very, very, very long time, always has been, you know, with especially with MOSFETs boards nice and early, but it's getting harder and harder and harder to source those. You can still get lots in second-hand market and for great prices, but if you was to, like, say, try and buy a brand new challenge kit, it's getting harder and harder to do that. They start at 1,500 for self-assembly, and then obviously, you know, $3,000 or whatever, you know, you sort of budgeting for new for that. So it's an expensive system, and obviously the main benefit of that was that obviously it had a cycle completion MOSFET system. It had real steel realistic sizing, and obviously, you know, that instantaneous trigger response is famous for PTW. So, and if they're the benefits of obviously that system for £3,000, this does all of that. So it has the real steel sizing, it has the MOSFET control system in there for the instantaneous trigger response. Okay, PTWs were pretty much out of the box on 11.1. This is not going to run 11.1, but as you can see there, trigger response was fantastic. So as was the rate of fire, perfectly great for thing. And that's like brings me back to my ultimate conclusion, you know. So with obviously this, you know, we've obviously talked about the main features being the external stuff, you know, and it's going to be so important that there's aftermarket for support for this, because if it gets the adoption of the aftermarket companies, you know, the Angry Guns, the Hayos, you know, the HAO, how you pronounce it, you got the Airsoft Artisan, you know what I mean? If you get these companies that would otherwise do huge amounts of external accessories for either PTW, you know, Solink, you know, so they do the huge parts for PTWs, because, you know, even though no one sort of, you know, apart from a couple of milsimmers talk about the PTWs, they have this huge, massive aftermarket sports of the most important things, which is obviously the external accessories, you know, and getting the guns to look, you know, a 416 conversion kit for this, you know, a KS1 conversion kit for this, you know, just an MCX conversion kit for this, you know, so it just, yeah, like I say, if that support comes in for this engine that's inside here, you know, this gearbox system, which is the same size as a real trigger box, yeah, so it's mind bending, isn't it? You know, that potentially, you know, I think what the people like, you know, is that the PTW is, you know, real steel size. So and this one is. I mean, even this magazine release, look, there's no screw on there like there is on NGRS. You know, that you've got to take this off like a real mag release on a real gun. You know, which obviously is pushing it through and spinning it off. It's going to be really interesting to see what the adoption rate is for obviously aftermarket people once they actually use it. But like I say, my ultimate conclusion, and this is my only negative if we're talking about pros and cons, obviously huge pros in that it's £750, obviously that's a negative, you know, but you know, you're getting obviously this beautiful, you know, like say MWS but electric, you know, sort of style of sizing. It's fantastic, it's beautiful, it's Cerakoted, you know, it's excellent externals, you know, but when I was shooting it, like I said, it was perfectly great, perfectly excellent, you know, fast single shot, fast, you know, full auto, you know, but what about the wow factor that comes from the NGRS? That was the only thing that was missing. So it's I fire the NGRS and it shakes, you know, and it's especially the upgraded ones when obviously it's got that faster trigger response, it's got that harder kick, you know, it's got that fire in the 3.2s and it's 350 FPS and it's hitting hard down range. And I know it's apples and oranges. We haven't upgraded this yet, you know, we haven't put the power into it to hit 3.2s, you know, really hard down range, but it just doesn't shake, you know, so and that's a huge part of not just NGRS, but yes, NGRS, you know, but it's, yeah, recoil guns is just, I just don't think it's a gimmick, you know, so I think it's just this genuine, fantastic thing when airsoft guns shake, you know, it adds this level of immersion into operating airsoft guns, which I just don't think it's gimmicky. It's, you take it away, and I feel like it's missing, you know, and I'm very, very much looking forward to the next iteration of this, which is obviously the recoil variant of it. And like I say, it's not to say, because that's going to be more expensive, you know, it's not to say that this is not great. Like I say, it's probably the most advanced and best airsoft gun currently on the market, you know what I mean? So it's not to take away from it. I just wish they had a little bit more wow as I was using it. But again, it's being so picky because it's like it's like 10 on the trump cards for like everything. It's top 10 trumps. It's like 10 for externals, 10 for performance, 10 for accuracy, because it's obviously got the new hop loading system in here. It's got a new system which basically has no pressure on the actual loading nozzle, so the BBs are never continuously loaded in. Therefore, you can't possibly ever get, you know, that mid-cap syndrome of like putting a 250 round mag in there and it just pressing up too hard and it being difficult for the loading nozzle to feed, or it pushing it through and putting some unusual spin on there. And like I said, we haven't done our range testing on this yet. You know, this could genuinely be because of that new system, because there's no other gun with a system like it, stabilizing nozzle. You know, it could be the most accurate gun ever produced, you know. And obviously when it comes to performance and you know, in the back in the day when NGRS would outrange other guns by 10, 15 meters, M14, when that first came out, and that would also outrange, everyone was going out and buying, back when I used to play at Urban Assault, everyone went out and you know, was all buying M14s. Everybody was running around. Nobody liked them. Well, some people do, but you know, not everyone liked them. But people were buying them for performance reasons, because they just couldn't stand that obviously this M14 come out and it outranged all normal M4s, because obviously M4s back then didn't have rotary hop systems. They didn't have these max hop units, you know what I mean? None of the sort of advantages that have now been put into these hop units to bring them forward. They had old crappy M4 hop units that used to unwind, yeah? So, you know, this is horrible. And you've got this new M14 and it was just outranging everything, just the way the new system just imparted that hop effect, and it it just went and just worked. And like I say, there's sometimes a technical design aspect, you know, to you know, like how BBs are pushed in there and fed, and the length of nozzles and the length of hop units, and like I say, the kind of pressure that the arm's putting down, what angle is the arms coming in at. Sometimes they one gun is just better, you know, so and they shoot further. And like I say, without doing obviously range tests of these, it really needs to be upgraded to get a fair test, you know. So I just don't like the out of box testing at 300 FPS, you know. It needs to be, you know, 3.2 ammo, you know, 3s, 3.2s, you know, just like obviously another upgraded NGRS would be. We need to be getting the lift on that, you know, in order to lift that out to 60 meters. We then need to be getting the FPS to bring that to site limits. Then we can do a range test on it, you know, and then obviously see how it compares. But like I say, otherwise for sort of 10 meters, it's fantastic groupings, it's fantastic trigger response, great. It's a great electric airsoft gun, but there's also other great electric airsoft guns, you know, companies like Spectre Arms and stuff that are doing brushless motors out of the box, you know, they're doing fantastic guns. Obviously their externals are not going to be a patch on this, you know, so, but, you know, the, and so I suppose in some ways that's what you're sort of paying for, you know, is that sort of PTW for sort of a £700 price point. But the performance-wise, like I say, you know, if you're just after an electric airsoft gun that shoots BBs, if that's your only requirement, that BBs come out of here and go down there, you know, and then there are cheaper airsoft guns, you know, they just are, you know, this, you're just never going to need something like this. But if you're somebody that needs the aftermarket externals, a base platform for the future, to be obviously, you know, like say somebody would buy an MWS because it's incredibly compatible, there's all these aftermarket bits, they can then obviously customize it, and suddenly they've got a, you know, MCX looking gun, you know, that just you know, obviously works really well because it's based on an MWS, and they've got the build that they're looking for, you know. So if you're somebody looking for something like this, then yeah, I think you get on really well with this, and you know, obviously if you need that sort of, you know, another reason for you know, some people just want guns that work, you know, so and they have the means, you know, so you know, in which case think of this like a sort of Apple product, as much as people like to hate on them, you know, they do things that work out of the box. So obviously, you know, that they want you to use their batteries, they want you to use their mags, you know, and like I say, if you're somebody that's completely fine with not going out there and trying to find the absolute cheapest possible mags to go with your brand new expensive gun, you know, and you're fine with paying the £60 price point for a battery, the £30 price point for mags, you know, the £750 price point for the gun, then you get something that works absolutely exceptional out of the box, you know. I mean, other than just the you know, the headache of like, oh, have I remembered to cock it, you know? So it's just something that just beautifully works out of the box, you know. So call it privilege, call it paying to win, I don't know. So, but you just get obviously a lot of fantastic airsoft gun, and it is the future. And if people are willing to wait, I'm sure this trickle down will start to happen. I'm sure there'll be other companies doing copies, but you know, for those that obviously want to jump on and get a fantastic, like I say, PTW-esque, you know, and that's a compliment because obviously they're fantastic guns, you know, then yeah, it's definitely for you. Like I say, if you're on a budget, no offense, like I say, you know, it's, would you want to save up for this? Like I say, you'd have to absolutely really, you know, benefit from and appreciate and want, you know, the real steel sizing. You know, otherwise, like, you know, for 450 quid you can get a lot of Spectre arms, you know, so or other manufacturers are available, you know what I mean. You know, it's you know, don't know, it's yeah, I mean, obviously I'm gonna wait, you know, for the recall version, so that's the one I think I'm gonna be most excited about. You know, I still would run, you know, an NGRS, yeah. So just because, you know, this didn't come with recall, so you know, it's a big selling point for me. The only thing that might change is, like I say, if I do a future review after having range tested this, after having upgraded it, and then for me, what trumps looks and feel is performance, yeah. So and people can have a go at those style of players all they like. I know there's a lot of toxicity in airsoft, but you know, everybody should obviously let everybody play. For those people that obviously want that performance advantage, that would buy an M14, you know, even if they hate it because it goes 15 meters, you know, further, then you know, then like I say, this is potentially the most accurate airsoft gun ever produced. Yeah, so in terms of range, in terms of grouping, in terms of over/under shots, you know, it's just going to have a better feeding system, and therefore less variance, and less variance is more accuracy in airsoft guns. But obviously, you know, like I say, it's going to need the bigger spring, it's going to need the heavier ammo, in order to get on par with obviously an upgraded AGRS. But AGRS is upgraded, is obviously going to have that banging wow factor as you're firing. You know, it's going to be bang, bang, bang. It's, you know, it's going to have that sort of the clack noise. It's going to have that sort of shaking, and you know, obviously we know that obviously a fully upgraded NGRS is a powerful gun. You know, and obviously the NGRS still has a huge selection to it, so it's not being replaced today at all. But you know, like I say, a beautiful new gun. The people that have obviously pre-ordered these, you know, so it's going to go out to them, and I'm sure they're going to be impressed, because it's just, you know, it is a beautiful gun. So it's just, like I say, you know, nobody ever picks up an MWS and thinks, oh, this is hideous. You know, the MWS is a beautiful gun. Yeah, for the people that own that, you know, it's you have to be appreciative, you know, so of obviously what TM have offered here. Have really, really, really moved the needle further forward. And in some ways, they haven't, because it's still just an electric airsoft gun. You know what I mean? So it still just fires BBs, you know, but now the price point is higher, and people have to decide on, obviously, you know, is that something they're looking for? You know, like I say, if I was wanting to do a KS1 build now, this is probably going to be the easiest platform to work off. You know, but give it a month, you know, see what the aftermarket companies come out with, and yeah, obviously, yeah, hopefully that's helped you. A little bit of a review on, obviously, should you buy the new Evolt from Marui. Like I say, beautiful gun, fantastic gun. You know, some negatives, obviously cost, proprietary batteries. You know, you absolutely have to use them. It just will not turn on, not unless obviously Jeftron or Gate want to come out with a replacement MOSFET system, in which case obviously, yeah, you know, world's your oyster then. So, but until that happens, you know, it's proprietary batteries. You know, you're looking at basically a, you know, best part of 900 to £1,000, you know, for the full kit. You know, and some mags are obviously 30 quid a pop. So yeah, it's an expensive gun, but it's also cheaper than a PTW. So technically speaking, and available, and just as nice externally. So that said, PTW does have that quick change cylinder system, so this looks like it's a little bit more complicated than that. So but hopefully I hate obviously not having the full information, but I could take, you know, months to really get that in, and I just wanted to get something up, if you know what I mean, for those people interested in right now, should they be buying this. You know, like, yes, you know, if recoil is not an issue for you, you know, it's not a deal breaker, then yes, absolutely, it's the most advanced airsoft gun currently available. So if you're willing to pay for it, you know, so yeah, but yeah, thank you, Marui, for this. It's beautiful. Looking forward to the recoil version and any other future models you decide to do with this obviously cool system. So just to obviously add the extra thing in there, this is blowback, right? Okay, so it does have a blowback system in this. You do get the sound from that, which is quite a unique sound, so it's not entirely lifeless. You know, you do get that noise in there, but like I say, there is no recoil physical weight in there shaking to give you that sensation of kick. Yeah, it's but like I say, it is technically a blowback. Basically, that system moves in there. Hop unit is just in there, just a little adjustable with your nail. Different than NGRS, but still rotary. And I think that covers pretty much it. So obviously it comes disassembled, so you can pop this pin out, separate the gun into two pieces, and then put it back in its box. So it's designed to effectively be disassembled via the top and bottom repeatedly. Yeah, so there is no upper receiver wobble, you know, so not really. I mean, I suppose I could add a tiny bit in there if I force it, but nothing that I would describe as it, you know, nothing really. So, you know, there's no physical gaps like there was always a little bit of a smidge of a gap on MWS, so they've really nailed the sizing on this particular one. And then, like I say, very thin grip, even though somehow there's a motor in there. And then obviously the right here is obviously real steel sizing, you know how it goes up at the back. Yeah, very cool, very cool. I just want the recoil one. So I just want the recoil one, and then I can do my KS1. So, or KS3, I think it is now. So I was looking online the other day. So, but yeah, it's yeah, exciting. So, but we hope you enjoy. Thank you.